Hello, I am here to walk us through the process of starting with a new couple and using the Hope Focus Counseling resources for that, if you're planning to do that. What you need to do is go to the website. Everything you're going to need is going to be at the hopecouples.com website. If you haven't become a Hope member um, to the website, it is free and I encourage it. So what you're going to need to do is go to the counselors section. You'll see lots of things there, but one of the things you're going to want to look right at is the Regent University Hope resources. This is a guest area and it requires a password. If you're part of the Hope team, you know the password. And so you enter that and it will let you in. And from here, you should have what you need. The first thing you're going to want to look at is this new file document. That's what's going to walk you through the first steps for working with a new couple. You should receive this information. You're going to want to download it. And then when you get here, it's going to ask for that password again. That way it's already password protected and you don't have any problems with accidentally forgetting the password when you're working on it. So this is what's on the Hope Couples file information form. First, there is the basic information that should be getting shared with you right from the beginning when you pick up the new case. This should already be filled in by the wonderful TA that does this work. At least their name, their phone number, their email, and their couple number for the sake of the research and who the clinician is. The rest of it will get filled in by you later on as you pick up the case. So you should have the basic information. That way you can find the file within the PSC and the PSC can get it all set up. So you'll see all this kind of stuff going along here. This is like a repeat of it, but sometimes the PSC needs this information, so we can copy and paste that to them. Here we have the couple screening documentation. Your couple may or may not have gotten a screening from the Hope team. It's possible that they were screened. If their initial registration information came in with no red flags, no concerns, nothing like that, from both partners, then we're not going to be doing a screening. If one partner had concerns, we're going to do a phone screening with one person. And if both partners had concerns, we're going to do a meeting with them either individually or together, depending on what the concern was. So you'll see some things here that may or may not be relevant to the case. And you can decide if you need that for your intake or not. You should be able to answer these questions either from the registration information or from your first intake meeting. You want to make sure that you know what's going on with this couple so you can bring it back to your supervisor and to the couple clinic team to kind of know whether they're risky, what the prognosis is, if it's risky, or if they should be referred out to individual therapy or what we have going on. So in general, as you have probably learned, if they have already decided to separate or divorce and they're not willing to change their mind, then they need to be referred out for care. And usually that's for divorce mediation is what we send them to, or individual therapy is an option too. You just want to know about mental health diagnoses and previous therapy. They shouldn't be in couple therapy at two places at the same time, for instance. And if they're in individual therapy, we're going to want to get a release of information to be able to share basic information. This one is just suicide intention or suicide ideations. Just want to make sure we don't miss that. The next one is domestic violence. And you're going to want to work with your supervision team to figure out how much to follow up on this. Any questions about domestic violence need to be done in individual meetings, never together. So you're going to just act like it's normal as part of the intake and follow up on domestic violence so that you can hear the little bit of the story about what's going on. We have some questions here. Again, these may already have been done in a screening, but you're probably going to want to follow up about that with the intake as well. This is another one. We have all the red flags up front. This is infidelity. You're going to want to know if they have had an infidelity, then you don't want to ignore it. Even if they kind of seem to want to ignore it, that infidelity needs to be addressed. And it's a different type of treatment than the HOPE approach for infidelity. We have a screening tool here as well. Everybody got the CAGE in their online questionnaires, but if anything was positive on that, or there's any questions that pop up, then there's a follow-up with alcohol, cannabis use, or general drug use. There's some extra screenings here that you can at least get some info. All right. So if everything was green light and nothing was a concern, you may not need to do any of this section with this is all red flags. But these are all things that can lead a supervisor to say, I don't think that they are appropriate for couple therapy. And so you really should make sure that whoever is making that decision for you with your supervisor, that they know this information by the end of the intake, if any of it is positive. So there's a little bit of directions here about screening information and where to put that information. Then you're going to do your intake. I'm going to go on down to the bottom of this because I have an appendix with the intake questions from the HOPE approach that are built in here. This is from the 2024 book that's coming out in the fall of 24. And we have 10 questions. They are worded a little bit like a script. We don't want you to just read the script at clients. That doesn't show good person-to-person connection. It doesn't show your competency. You're going to want to use your own words, paraphrase it, and memorize this. All right. That doesn't mean you can't kind of have a bit of a list in front of you to refer to so you don't forget anything. But at the same time, you're going to want to be so familiar with it that it looks like you've done it 50 times, even though this is your first time maybe doing it. So we've got 10 questions that I recommend as part of the intake that you do with a couple together in the dyadic. And then there's a few optional additions if they're a Christian. There's some tailoring to diversity, so you can use your judgment in terms of whether they've already covered that in your conversation or if they haven't brought it up and there's something there you want to follow up on. You have that, and then kind of final follow up on red flags. That need to be addressed. So red flags would be the priority in an intake before intake questions like this. All right, now going back up, we go back to the report. So this is the template on the report. From here, you'll have all the information in the questionnaires that they were given and that you should have a copy of those questionnaires given to you from the HOPE team. And then also from your intake. So you're going to take all that information and turn it into this templated report. And you're going to have all that sitting right here. Good information to put in. This one right here is qualitative. The 51 is the cutoff on the CSI, the Couple Satisfaction Index. So you can kind of just use your judgment looking at their numbers, looking at all their other questions like the care and that sort of thing, as well as your intake interview as to where you kind of want to put them at their baseline. This is basically taking the care and turning it into a a diagram. You got your communication patterns. Note here that we've got 1, 2, 3 different basic communication patterns that pop up. You want to erase the ones that don't apply. So if you have a couple that is in mutual avoidance, withdraw, then you erase the other two, right? If you have discussion avoidance, which is a super common one, then you're going to erase the first two and get rid of them, right? So no one can have all three of these dynamics in their relationship. And these are all built off of that couple's communication pattern questionnaire that you'll find in the questionnaires, as well as your observation of them in the intake. Got space for strengths here. You can pull the percept qualities checklist there, as well as what you talked about in your session. Make sure you get rid of the verse if you have a couple that's secular, that's not looking for anything from the Bible in their report. We don't want to be off-putting. And then you've got some stuff here that's pretty standard. The only thing you have a special note here, like if there's mild violence, but we think that they're appropriate, there's some substance abuse, but they're in treatment, or it's infrequent binge drinking kind of thing, or whatever else, making sure that that information does get put in here, of what we are recommending about that. Okay, now, treatment plan. This year, I'm trying a new thing. This is fall of 24 when I'm recording this, and we'll see how long this lasts, but this is your treatment plan. It's kind of a standard treatment plan to utilize with all couples. It doesn't mean you can't make some adjustments to it, but everything's kind of set up for you to be able to treat the majority of couples. that come through the office, and to be able to access the hopecouples.com workbook that gives them further support during the week for homework and all of that. So I created all of this summer thinking we had a lot of need for supports for everybody. So you're going to see it's intake. There's time either for kind of a second hour double intake or to have an extended intake if need be. And some homework to go with that. Then there's feedback and talking about timeout, self-regulation. Then there's session 2, which is about a negative reciprocity cycle and the video intervention. Then there's genogram, sensible scaling and sculpting, tango. At session 6, you should have a review of their goals, kind of going back to things, looking at the weekly tracker with them. Are things getting better? This is the point at which by now they should start to see some improvement. And if they haven't, it's probably time to think about doing something different. Do they need to make some commitments to doing their homework more consistently and more intentionally? Do they need to stop and work through some roadblocks in their relationship? Is couple therapy working? So that just kind of a come to Jesus kind of moment. And then there's a soft startup is also the kind of theme for that week. Then you can choose intimacy thermometer or cleave intervention for session 7. Session 8 is the beginning of forgiveness, but it's how to repair things generally in a relationship, forgiveness being one option. And then there are other ways too. And they start kind of reading about that and watching a video about the REACH model. And then there's 3 sessions of REACH. So addressing offenses, how they offend each other, how they tend to react to it, and beginning the forgiveness workbook. And they have kind of 2 weeks to do the forgiveness workbook, each individually on their own. And even if they don't have a lot of forgiveness things to work on, I think we want to think about having them do it because it's a chance for them to work on how they relate around offenses. This seems to be a real key in the research for them to talk about how we're going to handle offenses in the future and expecting that. So they have a couple of weeks to do that. And then there's kind of like a little down week a little bit. It's going back, it's reviewing their gains, it's doing the self-assessment. At this point, it's trying to talk about how do we want to take everything we've been learning and that kind of thing. Starts that conversation in session 11, really a focus in session 12. What have been our gains? Let's go back and do that weekly tracker and get our picture again, that little mountain of change. What new habits have been formed? What are their goals? And then this is the point at which you would ask if they need additional sessions to continue. Not everybody's going to be done in 13 sessions. Some people might need an extra 5 sessions or something. Typically, we don't go past that. But again, that's a supervision question. They should be completing their post questionnaires between session 12 and 13 and creating their Joshua Memorial so that session 13 is just about Joshua Memorial as a couple. And then on their own after session 13 is deciding what things from couple counseling they will continue, of course. So over here, you've got all these nice little links for you that they take them to particular pages in the workbook. So I want to take us there next and kind of orient you guys a little bit to what this is. The workbook has more in it than is in the treatment plan because there's just no way we can have them do everything. So you may want to shift a little and do something a little different, maybe pick a different thing, and that's fine. Work with your supervisor, obviously, on that. But it starts out with a little orientation here and access to the self-assessment workbook, which I'll show you. A little bit about cooling down. And so all of these understanding needs, these are the major components of the HOPE approach, right? So cooling down, understanding needs, communication and conflict, bonded intimacy, repair and forgiveness, and then finishing well. So that's all of them as they go. So you're going to start them with this HOPE orientation one. And my computer's thinking about it. It's there. And from here, we tell them, hey, let's start with what is hope? Are we ready? That kind of thing. If they read their initial welcome email from us, they may have already read this, but we suspect many haven't. So this is just like, what is hope? So it kind of is a little bit of orientation to what happens in therapy. they can read, are we ready? There's some like orientation of like, okay, you've done assessment by now. By the time you see them, they've already done quite a bit of questionnaires. We've got additional assessments if you want to use that. And then we have something called the self-assessment. And the self-assessment workbook is something that I created that under most, if you look back here, most of them are going to be doing this as part of their early, like the second session, unless you did a double intake and finished it all at once. And then they do it after the intake. Okay. So after the intake, they're going to watch orientation. When the intake's completely done, they should go home and do the self-assessment workbook. So the self-assessment workbook, this link is not working. So, okay. You'll notice you can also go up here for everything. The self-assessment workbook is something they can download, and it's going to carry them through, some information they can read, and it tells them to fill out some questions. But by now they've done a lot of questionnaires, I know, but this one is really a little different. It's a really like, how are we doing? What's your emotions, right? How happy are you? Those are two questions on this whole page, right? And then it does the care with them again. But it's a chance for them to do this and to talk about it with their partner, right? They maybe haven't talked about all these assessments yet. Here are intimacy thermometers, which you could use again later, but these are kind of 5 different ways of doing intimacy. You'll notice the directions, putting a dash where you think they are now and an X where they would like to be in the relationship. And this is our Hope Routine Outcome Monitoring worksheet. So this is a chance for them to just do that. They can bring it back into you the next week and then they won't have to do it. And then this is a little bit of a matrix for goal setting. So this is, what are things that you think have low effort versus high effort, high impact on the relationship versus low impact on the relationship? And they can start to think about differentiating their goals. A lot of couples come in to couple therapy and they just want to feel better. And this kind of helps them to pick through a little bit. So some couples will be able to do this without help. Other ones might need support, or they might just skip this page and this guy won't fall. That has to happen. And so this helps them to kind of take all of that and pick some goals for themselves to do. There's a dedicated spiritual space here for those who are spiritual or religious, and they can write a prayer or a statement of gratitude and hope for their relationship. And then it just tells them what's going to happen in the first meeting, which might have already happened by then because of the way we're structured here at Regent. But if people are doing this in the community and you're not part of Regent, then you can have them fill this out, and it tells them kind of what questions we tend to ask as part of the Hope intake process. And then this is just kind of a welcome. So you can see it's very simple as an intervention, but it gets the couple talking about what's going on with them, right? Okay, so that's the couple workbook. Then you've got your cool down and confidence. So if you look at, the treatment plan, it tells you all kinds of stuff about what to do. They can download that workbook. My computer is just being really funky. Don't know why. Because you see how that says cool, but then it's not actually going to the cool page. It's the cool page, hopecouples.com/cool. Most couples do need to start out with cooling down and building confidence. And so you'll see this on the treatment plan as some of the early ones. There's reading a blog about alligator intervention and watching the video and prepping for doing genogram the next week. Wow, this is just not doing anything, is it? That's super fun. Let me just try a different browser. Who knows what's happening here? Oh, there, finally came up. Okay. So this, most of the time you're going to start out maybe some timeout. Some couples are going to need a lot of focus on timeout. Other couples, it's just like, yeah, you rarely need this, but let's talk about how you do it when you do. The alligator intervention is the one that wanted them to read afterwards. Stopping negative reciprocity is an intervention, and the video intervention is also, these two are an intervention. And so the idea is when you do that intervention in the treatment plan, you're going to, like, you can read it and make sure you understand how to stop negative reciprocity. And then you're going to set up the video intervention. Here in our clinic, you can use Panopto to record and then stop the recording, go back and watch it together. If you are working in the community, you might actually end up needing to use, if you don't have video equipment, use your client's phone. So they can record themselves and you don't have some of the HIPAA concerns around all of that. So work with your supervisor, obviously, if you're in the community about their comfort level with that. So that's cool down. Then you're going to move on into understanding needs. And so this is going to be genogram. Primarily is the main intervention here, but there's some other things they can read. And then scaling and sculpting. Scaling and sculpting is a very central intervention in the HOPE approach. And there's a link here to watch a video of Dr. Worthington role playing that with a couple. So you as clinicians can see that, but also your couple can see how another couple did it and make that part of the homework before they come in. And then when they come in, they're ready to go, right? So, so they're reflecting on the real needs underneath the arguments here at this point, right? Like what's really happening in the genogram, what's really happening in the scaling. And then you can go deeper as you talk to them about Tango. So Tango is part of the next section in communication and conflict. And in this section, we're going to have primarily Tango or Tango E. It's your choice. If you have a couple that's moving along and doing pretty well, you could probably do Tango E. If they're lower functioning, you probably need to do Tango with them. And so there's some stuff here. There's all the Tango resources. We actually have an entire page just for Tango for you. So there's the video demonstration, the floor cards, the handouts with explanations, the fridge card, and a demonstration with Dr. Jen, role playing with a couple. So you've got all the good stuff here to help you as a clinician, but also you can send your couple there and they can learn about it that way. So this is your mid-review. Once in a while, you might have a couple that needs to do a second week on Tango and you're going to drop the soft startup, but soft startup is a really common one. It is the start difficult conversation ones right here. And it, as you can see, like once you click on that, then you get a post and there's a worksheet and there's some information on how to do difficult conversations as a couple. And so all of that is right there ready for them. Supports you in your work. So the next one is intimacy thermometer. You start to see this, right? You'll notice each week that the homework changes. Obviously, you and your supervisor can change that. These are recommendations. The TCCP worksheet is actually that initial worksheet. So if you go down here, that's this Thanks, Connect, Care, Prayer worksheet. And the couple can do that. I'm going to have a bunch of these printed off ready for our clinicians and the team. But there's a little info here. You can have them read to hopefully inspire them to do this. Some couples really get into this worksheet and it becomes something they do every week, kind of like you have in like cognitive processing therapy does this, where they kind of do the same worksheets every week, that kind of thing. Other people really push it away. Use your judgment, obviously. But we start out with the first several weeks of doing date night and TCCP as their primary homework, but there's a little other things to do in there as well. And as time goes on, you might see some other things like starting the forgiveness workbook, that kind of thing pops up later. Okay. So you kind of get a sense of that, making sure, of course, that they're ready for their finishing well. Little note for our clinic where we're doing research on these couples too, as well as helping them. You shouldn't start the termination session with them until they've done their questionnaires. So if they show up to termination having not done their questionnaires, you just go, okay, that's fine. Let's pull those out, right? Let's grab a phone or an iPad from the front desk or a computer and let's pull it up and let's have you guys fill that out and I'll wait. And when you're done, we'll finish our session. So if they've done it ahead of time, then you can just spend the time, reflecting on what's been learned and what they want to take with them and having a nice, healthy goodbye. So all of that gets done here. There's a couple of notes. This treatment tracking sheet is something to bring to groups who consultative supervision and the HOPE team when we meet, just to kind of get you tracking, and it allows us to know what's happening as supervisors. For myself and the advanced clinician or the advanced supervisors, we don't have any advanced clinicians this year, so, but I'm leaving there for people when they get to third year. And then this is all the stuff you have to do before termination session that's different, emails and all that kind of stuff. All right. And the 6-month follow-up procedures are all here as well. Okay. So we've already done this. So back to the website, we need to go back here. What else is on this Hope resources page? Wow, so many good things. If you need to use the Keras office spaces for any reason, you can click right there. The front desk of the PSC has keys, and there's a code for the Hope Office store that's shared. There's a link here for Panopto if you need that. We do have a few different assessments this year, and I'm going to make a separate video on doing the assessment key for people. You've got domestic violence and infidelity links here to support you if that pops up. How to do titanium notes and a little bit of time to track documentation. If you have an infidelity intake, there's a separate template for working with those couples, and that's sitting here. There's the treatment monitoring template. So we do monitor them with a routine outcome. So they should, there's all your information you need to be able to access that. And then there's an Excel file that you can make the graphic if you want. And then this is all the termination stuff. I have some email templates. Again, make sure your supervisor's okay with it, but providing these for you to communicate with the couple every week and also to get them to do their weekly form. You can also get the routine outcome monitoring on paper and enter it yourself if you want to. Some people find that easier because you can just look at it, and get some information as they're walking in the door. And some clients do that. That's fine, but somebody needs to get that data into the computer before, the day is done. So you got a little bit of other stuff here, some webinars, protocols for cohabiting couples and step couples that pop up, all that, which I will point you also to a little bit of resources here, including clinical strategy papers, all kinds of issues of things we have run into across the years. And so issues of sexuality, special couple populations, individual clinical problems, all that. Please don't forget that good work is there. Well, use our template, please, for this. That's more for people that are not in the Hope Clinic, can use those templates. If you are a first-year student and need to do video training, that's all here, and the certificate and all of that. And I don't even know it's under resources, nothing. Okay, so thank you very much. I know that this is a lot of information, but I thought it'd be helpful to videotape it, and let's see if that helps everybody to learn a little bit and have this as a resource. Thanks a lot, guys.